Oh, there you go, black and yellows. Kaizer Chiefs colours, aren't they? Well done. Certainly to the Hurricanes. They deserved that over a season where they finished top overall. And yeah, that home final certainly seemed to aid them as well. The conditions are those that they would have been a lot more used to than the Emirates Lions, unfortunately. But well done to them. What a wonderful season for Chris Boyd and John Plumtree. I suppose vindication after having been in the final last year, and this is the third time they play in a Super Rugby final, so I suppose three times the charm, I suppose, for them. For the Lions, however, could just be the start of an era, despite the result today and the disappointment of the result. They certainly have surprised many, including a couple of New Zealand teams as well, and we're hoping that this is the start and not the end for the Lions, the start of something really good. They have entertained us throughout the season. There will be a lot of talk, particularly about the choice to rest their players and whether or not it's affected them adversely by not having the opportunity to host a final in Johannesburg. That said, however, a wonderful season, and yes, they'll be disappointed, Jean, but boy, have they given us reason to smile and celebrate this year.
Yeah, they will be disappointed. But as we said, I think on the day the best team won, and they'll take a lot of heart out of this as well. You look at the Hurricanes team, and this is also a process, maybe a 3-4 year plan that's come together now only. So with that in mind, I think the Lions will take heart and hopefully come back stronger next year.
Well, that's certainly been the case since their relegation, Nick, from Super Rugby, the re-entry. I think they finished 8th the first season back, and to see how far they've come in a relatively short space of time, because 3 years isn't all that long. There's definitely progression. Can they sustain that?
Absolutely they can, as long as they keep their players, and it looks like the recruitment is going well. They've got some really good SA Schools players going to them this year, so it's been a great season for the Lions. Unfortunately, these are work conditions that they are not used to. A dry Emirates Park is completely different from a wet, windy Wellington, and it just looked like the Hurricanes were more comfortable playing in that weather, especially Beauden Barrett. His kicking, not only for poles, but his kicking in general play was outstanding. But what I thought really summed this game up was how they've changed their pack from being a powder puff pack 4 or 5 years ago. We could really smash them, to a team that won a penalty off a vital scrum that the Lions chose just before half-time, and they managed to turn that into a penalty for them. And they won at least three of the Lions' throws in the lineouts. And they won a lot of ball again in windy conditions at the back of the lineout, which is very good attacking ball and allows backline players so much more space.
The role of John Plumtree in that?
Absolutely integral. You know, John Plumtree is an outstanding coach, was an outstanding coach at the Sharks. He was a very, very good assistant coach with Ireland, with the forwards, and he's been a brilliant coach with the Hurricanes. He's been involved in the final last year, taking them to the final, and winning a final this year. And he is solely responsible for the improvement in the forward pack. I think he's a great loss, in fact, to South African rugby. That, you know, to have a person like him who had international experience, and he was around for a while at the Sharks, but every coach goes through the ups and downs, and sometimes you've got to stick with a coach through a difficult season to make sure that the team in the end improves. And I think the Lions did that with their team and their coaching staff. A guy like Johan Ackermann was involved with Mitchell, and through the firing of John Mitchell, they gave him the opportunity. They were out of Super Rugby for a year, but they showed a lot of confidence in him, in JP Ferreira and in Swys de Bruin, and they've been absolutely brilliant these last 3 years. To get through to a final is outstanding. I still think, though, there's going to be a niggling thought that perhaps we should have sent a slightly stronger team to the Jaguars, so we could have come away with 1 point. Because I really believe if they'd played at Emirates Park this afternoon in dry conditions, making the Hurricanes travel halfway across the world, that's the 17 points. Not quite 17 points, but it's a much tighter game, and they've got a much better chance of winning it. So that might be the only regret this season. Well,
the other regret is, I suppose, the fact that they allowed the Canes to play their game last. They also very defensively was superior the last time the two teams played at Emirates Airline Park. This time around, absolutely shut down the space that Alton had to work with. And when you look at that battle, that key battle that we were discussing in the lead-up between Beauden Barrett and Alton Yankees, you'd have to say Beauden Barrett comes up trumps.
Yeah, but, you know, going back to Alton, I thought at one stage he should have actually pull the game closer to himself and say, I need to control this much better, because at one stage it looked like he wanted somebody else to control the game. And I think in conditions like this is where the Flyers say, bring the ball to me, let me control it. And I thought at one stage he didn't really do that, and that put everybody else under pressure. And then they tried a little bit the running game, and they kept losing the ball in the tackle, and that made it even more difficult. Well, I still believe in conditions like this, if you look at the Canes, what they did in the first half, they did far more kicking than the Lions. And the Lions, not really in it, as we spoke about. They struggled to actually find a way into the game. But they could have made it a lot easier by putting the ball behind and quite deep, but very close to the touch line, to force the Canes to go open and put them inside their 22, and then say, come, 80 minutes, you score against me. That never happened. And then at one stage, because of all this, they forced the Lions to start playing and forcing the game. And that's what you don't want that in conditions like this. It's too difficult.
But in terms of momentum, the Lions had a chance to score the first 3 points. The wind knocked the ball over. Elton rushed his kick. He missed it. And it was the opposite for Beauden Barrett. He got his first chance, slotted the points. All of a sudden, one team has the ascendancy. Yes, it's only 3 points on the board, but what does that do for confidence and for momentum for a team?
No, it's huge, and we would have seen that today. Elton missing his, so he went on to not have his best game of the season, where Beauden had a good game. And you mentioned chances. The Hurricanes, again, taking all their chances. I mean, the Lions' defence was not bad today. It was actually really good. The Hurricanes, 2 tries, 1 kick from Mapu into Corey Jane's hands, and then the other try, a tap back from a line-out, and pounced on by Beauden Barrett. So it was definitely a game of chances. The Lions had a few chances to go for poles again, and they chose the scrum, which was a huge turning point in the game when they got turned over for a penalty there. So, yeah, it was a game of chances, and we saw that confidence in the Flyers, that Beauden Barrett playing still with so much confidence, and Elton, after that first kick, took a bit of a knock, I think.
You talk about the Lions' defence, but Ashwin, we've been speaking about the Hurricanes' rush defence and how effective it's been. 3.5 matches, still, well, not conceded a try in 3.5 matches. That's
no try in 3.5 games, as you correctly mentioned. Then Beauden Barrett mentioned it in the build-up when we're talking about it. He was saying that it's a game about defence, and they went out there, and what they did was, I think that's where we have to commend the Hurricanes for what they've managed to achieve in the past 3 weeks. They've played the Sharks, they've played last weekend in the semi-finals, and today, and no team has scored against them. And I think that is evident of the way that they defended today. You could see that the Lions, if you look at them in the past 2 weeks, they were able to beat firstly the Chiefs and then the Highlanders, and the manner within which the Lions played. Today we saw a defensive system that did not allow that. And unfortunately for the Lions, they weren't able to find a different way of penetrating the defensive line. We saw a rush defense that came up. And I think the comparison for me between the 2 defensive efforts today was the hesitancy from the Lions on their rush defense. It's almost as though the intent is to rush up and apply pressure, but the defensive line weren't able to have the same efficiency when they go up, as opposed to what the Hurricanes did. So I think, and then the tactical play between TJ Paranara and Beauden Barrett versus a Faf de Klerk and Elton Yankees, there also, I think, was the Hurricanes more superior. So they totally deserve to win. The lessons that they've learned from last year's final, you can see as to how that has come through in this year's final. And then I think finally for me, towards the end of the game, there was about 5 minutes where we saw the Lions really trying to get over the advantage line. You saw the intent. They wanted to score. They recognized we have to score in order if we want to stay in this final. They did that, but then the Hurricanes defensively did exactly the same as what they did last weekend against in the semi-final against the Chiefs. They were able to turn over ball. There was about 3 or 4 turnovers from them, and then clear it. And the Lions just came, wave after wave on attack. But to me, a tactically well-executed performance by the Hurricanes. But let's look at the Lions. In the beginning of the season, if we had asked the question as to which teams do we think will be in the finals today, I don't think any one of us would have said the Lions. But here's a team that have grown. They're in the final. They had to go away from home to go and play there. The weather conditions wasn't what they were used to. So I think all the odds was, stacked against them. And even the coach mentioned it last week. You know, we are not the favourites, they're the favourites. And so I think today, if you look at the Lions, you know, I think here is a team that have come, they've stayed in it, and they can be very proud of what they've managed to achieve throughout the season.
You guys, while we're focusing on defence, you'd have to argue that the Hurricanes have been possibly the best defensive side or most effective defensive side, especially against a team like the Lions. We know the New Zealanders like uniform structure in attack, in scrums, and the way they do things. Do you think that we could see this rush defence permeate or seep into what the All Blacks could apply in Rugby Champs? Because we're not too far away from that. And we will touch on the Springbok team, which will be announced a little later. Do you think that we could see the All Blacks think if the South Africans do have attacking intent like the Lions, we know exactly how to thwart it?
Yeah, look, I think the conditions play a massive part in that as well. If you do that rush defence, and the Highlanders did try a little bit of the same in the semi-final, if you do that in dry conditions, you know, it is much easier to get through that and past that with your attacking kicks, because you do have a little bit more time on the ball. You know, you saw Elton a couple of times today trying and having the option of that kick, but he's just rushed a little bit. And that's the problem with the rush defence, is that it puts you under pressure. You make mistakes, the opposition pounce on it, they score a try. With the Hurricanes' first try, I think that's a good example. So, you know, the All Blacks might look at it, but I think they're pretty set in their structures, and they're a pretty well-oiled machine at the moment.
How do you beat a defence like that, Nick? I suppose the gaps don't appear close at close quarters. I
think if you look at how the Hurricanes played, they played against a strong defence from the Lions, but they just seemed more comfortable on the ball in the wet weather. So the pick and goes from their forwards that was very effective. I thought Perenara's use of the blind side was very effective, and also they managed to find a bit more space with their kicks than the Lions. So in rush defence in wet weather is very effective, as John said, because you're under time pressure for the ball, and the ball often you're getting a floated pass, the ball isn't quite as accurate, it's more difficult to control in your hands and from your hand to your feet. But in dry weather, you have more time. So the South Africans will always be more competent at Ellis Park or Pretoria in a dry day, although the All Blacks are very comfortable on a dry day. They can score lots of tries as well. So I think that they're an intelligent enough team, the All Blacks, to adapt a defensive strategy according to the weather. And if they see that it's a damp day, we're under pressure, we're trying to keep the ball in hand, as they did in the semi-final against us at the World Cup. You know, they were very disciplined, didn't give penalties away, played territory. They kicked 6 grubbers in our 22 in that semi-final. They're quite prepared to play territorial game with attacking kicks if they have to. But we know that they're capable of scoring 6 tries in a game too on a dry day if they can create those opportunities. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
That last run out of defence from Barrett, if you remember, he collected an opportunity in his half. And he looked up and it was a 3 against 1. And he ran, dummied, broke, kicked a long kick downfield. Great backtracking by Jaco Kriel, saved a very dangerous situation. But that's what they do so well, is that they see an opportunity out of nothing, and they will take an opportunity to score a try. And it's what the Lions have been really good at this season, but I still believe this was a game, had they played at Emirates Park, they would have had a very good chance of winning. By playing away, before the game, I thought it was going to be a really tough hill to climb.
Ash?
Just onto that as well, I think, you know, in terms of beating a rush defence is your positioning as well. And I think if we look at last weekend's semi-final, we saw that Alton's positioning, it was a lot better than what it was today, and he was able to beat the oncoming defensive line. And that's because of the rush defence, but also how the Hurricanes were able to disrupt the breakdown and then didn't give the Lions the time, Butchie. Do you think that is also maybe something that applied today?
No, 100%. I think a lot of credit must go to the Hurricanes forwards. I think they were outstanding today. But I also felt Elton was a bit indecisive today. A lot of the time he wasn't too sure, am I going to run this or am I going to kick it? You know, and he got that. That's the problem. He wasn't getting in a position to kick, so he didn't have enough time to kick, and he actually wasn't even in a place to attack. So he was almost in no man's land. So for me, he just needed to make the decision early. Okay, it's on here, I'm going to have a go here. And sorry, Ash, and then also just the handing, like Jean said, 2 or 3 passes that they could easily do here at Ellis Park with the conditions behind the player, above the head, on the ankles. It's not easy in those conditions.
So I just want to latch on to that, because my question to you as a fly-off is, you know, we saw, if we look at the past 2 weeks, in fact, last week we saw and the week before when Alton back-to-back quality games. Now today you say that, you know, the timing, getting into the position and so forth. So what is the difference then? Is it because of the pressure that is being applied from the defensive team, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely the rush defence today definitely had a huge part to play in it, as well as the conditions. I think it's always tough in those conditions. You think you can play like you are at Ellis Park, but you definitely can't. And I think another area between the two flags that's quite interesting is when you watch them kick for goal. You watch Beauden Barrett kick for goal. He keeps the ball nice and low. He's obviously been playing all his rugby in Wellington, where the weather's pretty terrible, and where Alton, he likes to kick the ball pretty high. So it makes a huge difference in that stadium, the way you're kicking for poles. If you're going to keep it low, you've got a more chance of it going over compared to if you get a lot of air on the ball.
Nick,
no, if the problem today was Alton never made up his mind what he was going to do, which game he was going to play, and I think that's where he really falls short. He should have decided. Conditions like this, you don't play like that. We would like to see a game like that, but today you don't play like that. And then go back 3 or 4 times inside their 22, where he should have taken control. They tried to pass the ball behind, and the one try came because of a bad pass. Yep. The ball, sometimes just don't go further than the fly-off in conditions like this. And when you've got the wind behind you, 99%, the problem is people think the wind will win you the game. You've got to go and do the right decision, make the right decisions and play the right game.
Nick, just on another point, we always talk week in and week out about bodies in motion. And today we saw that with the Lions, where they used to, we saw them throughout the season, bodies in motion, running on, giving the fly half, the inside centre, number 9 options. Today there was a difference between the two teams. Even in this weather, we saw the Hurricanes, the bodies in motion were much more than what we saw from the Lions.
That's exactly right. But I do think that that with that defence, with the Hurricanes' defence, when the Lions were trying to get momentum, they were being tackled 2 metres behind the advantage line, would win a ruck again, and this next pass off 9 to a forward, they were getting tackled another 2 metres. So there was never any momentum, and you've got to go downfield first in order to get that running and passing game going. And so by going backwards slowly after 4 rucks, they were forced into kicking. And their kicks were defensive kicks under pressure, having gone backwards, whereas the Hurricanes, a lot of them were, after the forwards had gone forward and a little bit of momentum, then the fly-off took it to the line and made some very accurate attacking kicks. And there's just a difference in terms of the quality of the ball that 9 and 10 are getting from their forwards. I thought it was slightly better, which the Hurricanes presented the ball better. Even the line-out that Butch you talk about, 10 metres from the line, Whiteley goes up and contests the ball at the back. It's really 2 Lions errors that gave the Hurricanes the try. Elton should have got into a better position to clear for touch, or Faf should have cleared for touch from the base. And when you're defending 10 metres from your line in wet weather, slippery weather, it's the last ball a scrum half wants to get is a tap-back, hacked ball into your in-goal area. So those 2 tries were off Lions errors. If they could have rectified those errors, it was a penalty kicking game.
Yeah, but Nick, if you just listening to what you just say now, that's what's so clear. The Hurricanes knew that's the way they're going to play in conditions like this.
And play down there.
And you could see the Lions' doubt, and that's why they made the mistakes, because in all essence they should have been downfield in a better position and not taking the pressure as they did the whole time.
John, another area of the game was the collision area. And we saw that quite evident in the score, that the Hurricanes were able to dominate in the collision. And that gave them the momentum. Now, for the Lions, I mean, we're looking at this now in hindsight, perhaps just the runner off the shoulder, but is it because perhaps the weather conditions that didn't allow them to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything that's already been said, in that, yes, the Lions were up for it physically, and certainly they went in there with a lot of intent, but the execution wasn't good. So we spoke about before the game of the other players giving the decision-makers options. They didn't have those options today, so they were stuck with 1 or 2 options. And then what's happening, so we're saying about kicking and running versus running. Now, if you're going to run the ball, then usually you're flat. Then it's very difficult to go back and kick. So if your first option is kicking and you get good momentum, then you can run onto the ball, and then, you know, if you're not going to kick, run onto it and keep on attacking. What makes it more difficult is in wet conditions, you can't catch long. So you can't catch the ball there. You have to catch close to your body, and that takes more time as well. And then if you kick with a rush defence, you're more under pressure. So all of those things combined, I think just put the Lions under too much pressure today.
Right, guys, we'll come back to the chat because there's a lot of reaction as well on social media. And we spoke about the fact, and Ashwin referred to the fact, that had anyone suggested that the Lions would find themselves in a final in Super Rugby, we'd all probably have said no. MCG on Twitter says no one expected the Canes to make the final either. And I think he's got a point there. We probably didn't know if they're going to be as good as they were last season, and they came just short. But well done to Chris Boyd and John Plumtree. Let's hear from the Canes coach.
Well, Chris, it's been 20 years, but you've delivered it.
Yeah, I think it's relief more than pleasure in a lot of ways. As you say, there's a fair weight of expectation. We've the last super side to finally lift the trophy and win a title, and obviously the whole club's delighted.
Right, well, let's look at how you've done it. And I give you defence, and I give you pretty much a month of rugby without conceding a try. How have you done that?
Look, I think it's indicative this side. They've developed a great attitude and a great character amongst themselves, and so not only the defence, but I think they've worked really hard, and we've been coming through the back door for about 6 weeks now, and it's just we've had good self-belief and good trust, and I think it's carried us a long way.
And the defence has led to other aspects of the game, obviously, because you can trust that, you can trust going forward as well, and man, you've done that well with some really good work from your halves, but generally speaking all around.
Yeah, again, we didn't get the crumbs that we wanted tonight, but when you put that much pressure on the opposition and you get some crumbs, then this side, along with a lot of the other Kiwi sides, to be fair, can punish you for those crumbs.
How much did what you've achieved tonight pay back this time last year?
We've certainly had a lot of messages from last year's guys, and we tried very hard to focus on 216. I know it took me personally months to get over losing last year's final. You know, the Hollands were worthy winners, but we thought if we had played a little bit better, we might have been able to do the job, which we didn't. And so, yep, there's certainly some. I couldn't have faced another loss at home.
Yeah, can I ask you about two areas which I think everyone looking at the Hurricanes side going into the season were saying, how are they going to replace the centres? And you've lost two very, very experienced locks. But if you look at the performance of the Hurricanes, they were two of the highlighted areas.
I think that's indicative of this side, that we had some group of players that came in that just wanted to work hard and do the best they could, and I think, as you said, Michael and Via have been a revelation in the locks. We're really playing 5 loose forwards, and that suited the way we played the game. The trade-off for that is, you know, in your set piece, which we creaked a little bit on occasions. So they've been great, and I've always had confidence in the guys in the midfield, and so you know, we're never going to replace Mar and Conrad, and we're never going to replace Thrushy, and now, you know, Victor's going, for instance, we're never going to replace him. But the nice thing about it is that I think we've got, you know, there's another generation of boys coming, and that next group down, they've all stood up and done a real good job for us.
Can I ask you about a few individuals? I know collectively it's been a wonderful effort, but I can't ignore perhaps Vito, 100 games.
Well, I think Victor's been much misunderstood in a lot of ways, and perhaps he's, you know, my personal opinion is he might have been a little bit shortchanged in the black jersey, and I think he's been an absolute trooper for the Hurricanes. 100 games, and big motivation last week was to make sure we didn't hang him out to dry on 99, and I think he's been consistently outstanding for us, along with Artie Severe and Brad Shields have made a pretty good loose forward trio.
Yeah, I totally agree. The guts of Coles tonight and having to go back out there.
Yeah, he wasn't particularly happy, and you know, at one stage he got a run on the short side, and he just didn't want to go to contact, so he went to ground. But I mean, that showed. I mean, he's just been immense for us this year. Not only the way he's played, but you know, the demand and the character that he's brought to the team.
And just finally, look, when you play in conditions like this, you have to have great control, and you found that in your halves. TJ and Beauden Barrett grew as the season got more important.
Oh, absolutely, and I think there was no surprise to me that the 4 sides that were left in semi-finals had very good 9s and 10s that were all in good form, and I think if you're going to be competitive at the right end of the season, your 9, your 10, your 15, 8, 9, 10 and 15, they've all got to be on top of their game. And, you know, in that respect, Jimmy Marshall at fullback for us has been an unsung hero for most of the season, and I think if you asked Beauden who helped him along with his game a lot, it was Jimmy Marshall. So we're going to miss him going off to Lynn Irish.
Just finally, you've had the perfect day. Tawa won.
It's been a magnificent double. Tawa got their second club title, which, you know, I'm immensely proud of the boys there. They were lost their first 3 and then came back from the back door as well. So great night for them. Congratulations, Chris. You've done Wellington proud. Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Well, he'll be a man who's going to be celebrating tonight. Chris Boyd and John Plumtree as well. The team of theirs certainly doing incredibly well. And, well, we spoke about coaching and we spoke about the value of those two guys. Let's take a closer look at what it is the Lions coaches have done. Yes, we know they play a lovely brand of rugby. Yes, we know that they've been one of the most competitive teams in the competition. But more than that, John, and whenever you hear Warren Whiteley speak about the team culture, it seems to be something that Johan Ackermann is really heavy on. He speaks all the time about the team culture, about playing for each other. How much does that permeate onto what you do on the field as a player?
I think it's massive. You know, they've got something right there at the Lions where they are playing for each other, and that takes you a long way. You look at the Hurricanes team, and it's the same there. You know, there's not a lot of superstars in that team, but as a unit, they're fantastic, and they do the same. They play for each other, and they've got a fantastic culture going. So, you know, I think that it's something that's very important, but it's also something that takes time. It takes time with, you know, the same players together for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then only do you see the results. But certainly the signs are there that the Lions team are a happy bunch, first of all, and that they're improving every single year. Already this is an improvement, and next year I think nothing less than the championship will be good enough for them.
Nick, we see it with the All Blacks all the time. Continuity insofar as the coaching staff goes. Whenever there's a change, it always happens from within the ranks, and that's what happened at the Lions. It's happened now with the Stormers with Robbie Fleck. But besides that, I scratch my head. It doesn't happen terribly often. How valuable is that to have somebody who's got the inside track, who knows the players backwards, probably would have coached them at closer quarters, with Ackermann having been the forwards coach previously and now taking over the whole bank shoot? It
makes a massive difference. Obviously, I think a couple of appointments were key. I think Kevin de Klerk getting the presidency there, his relationship with Strali, who's a very good CEO. Obviously, he did a great job with the Sharks, and he's doing a great job with the Lions as well. And then, of course, the appointment of Ackermann, who's a humble guy, but works incredibly hard, but he sounds like a fantastic man manager. Everyone speaks very highly about how much he cares for his players, and he's a very thoughtful person. And then Swys de Bruin is a great attacking coach. He's got a lot of ideas that he's brought from New Zealand rugby, which they've managed to include into their attack. And then JP Ferreira is a guy from within the Lions system who's managed to go through various different roles, has the respect of the players, works incredibly hard. So, and then, of course, the relationship between the captain of the team and the coach is vital. So the fact that Warren Whiteley gets on so well with this coaching staff, clearly, and that he's highly respected, as is Jaco Kriel when he captains the team, by the rest of the players, is a massive advantage. So there's a lot of happiness in that team. If they manage to get Mostert, for example, not going to France, it's solely because of the atmosphere and the culture they've created. He's in a happy group, and a rugby player loves playing in a happy system. So for him to leave, he can earn a lot more money in France, but will he get as much pleasure out of his rugby as he does with the Lions is questionable.
Well, it's certainly an interesting one, because you mentioned when Kevin de Klerk took over is when the change started happening, and Butch, you were there during that very crucial time in Lions rugby when the changes were happening, when Kevin came in, and you came in as a senior player guiding the youngsters, and a lot of the guys that we've mentioned now were already part of the system as well. Is that something that you started seeing early fruits of then already? When was it, 2011, 2012?
Yeah, well, it's not very positive for me, because as soon as I left, they actually started playing even better. Maybe I was
Maybe you needed to leave.
In there.
But you said you were the difference. Just a bad difference.
No, I think for me the thing where the Lions have improved so much is their consistency. You know, even when I was there back in 2011, we could go to Canberra and beat the Brumbies, you know, and then the next weekend we could lose a game we should easily win, you know. So for me, the Lions are more consistent now. Every weekend they put in a good performance, and that's why they're winning week in and week out.
Yeah, I just had to remind Butch that he once wore a Lions cap as well. But Johan Ackermann, yes, will be disappointed today, but I think he'll probably return to South Africa to a rousing ovation, hopefully a pretty big crowd to meet them at OR Tambo when they touch down, because he has been phenomenal in leading his team to the final.
Well, Johan, condolences, but a very brave performance.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, I want to thank the Lord Jesus, for His grace and, blessings over this year. And, I'm proud of the boys for getting in the final and for the effort they've put out there. And congratulations to the Hurricanes.
They defended again very well. I've done it for the last 3.5 weeks. Just so hard to break down.
Yeah, there was opportunity. We missed maybe some of it, and one or twice the bounce didn't want to go away. But credit to them, they really defended well. And maybe on a dry day, you could have spread the ball a little bit more. But they put you under tremendous pressure, but it was a great arm wrestle, And I think either team didn't really construct the tries as both defences were quite good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, having said that, your guys, I mean, when you look at the 2 tries you did concede in the match, they were opportunistic rather than created.
Yeah, definitely. One was a charge down kick and the other one a steal line out. But, I think Beauden Barrett controlled the game very well, the kicking game, and both, a lot of the game was played in the middle of the park, and, and it shows you what classy player he is.
Let's look at the season in general. OK, you haven't got the finish that you wanted, but you must be thrilled with the ground that you've made up.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were up there with scoring tries and line breaks and all the stats that meant to be. Again, like I said, I want to thank the supporters and my team and my management for getting to the final. It's a lesson we've learned. I trust you'll take a lot out of this, and hopefully, like you said, if we can be there again, maybe take that lessons.
I see by the look on your face, there's disappointment, of course, but the style of rugby you've brought to South Africa in particular, and this competition has been a revelation.
Yeah, that's was one of the aim from the group of players, that we want to be different. We want to play a good brand and enjoy it. That's most of all. We want players to enjoy. They must enjoy to play the game. And if we've done that to our supporters, we're glad. I know they will be disappointed, but it's a tremendous season for us. Some of the victories that we've achieved this year, was making history, and that's why I say we're pleased of the performance.
Well, you've been terrific ambassadors. Thank you for what you've contributed on behalf of the New Zealand public and everyone watching around the world, and safe travel home. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank New Zealand people for always making us feel welcome, and again, congratulations to the Hurricanes.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations to the Hurricanes indeed. And, well, I spoke about the fact that the Lions have certainly shown improvement since their re-entry into Vodacom Super Rugby, finishing 8th after that and finding themselves in a final this year, guys. And just talking off camera, I might as well bring it up. Were they ambitious enough? Did they believe, and please all jump in, that they could go to Wellington and win this match? Naas?
See, what worries me about 3 weeks ago, it was quite in the media, they were satisfied they're in the playoffs. And I thought that they're actually good enough to go and win in a final. And just listen to Johan now also. He said, I'm glad we're in the final. And you've got to look at finals, because everybody thinks, OK, it's easy to get there again. It's not that easy, boys. It's very hard to get into finals. And maybe this was a final for them to look at and say, we should have actually done it this way, we could have won it, and it's a different
Which was why a team anticipating that they could get into a final would prefer to have a home final, which is perhaps they would have taken a slightly different decision on that Jaguars game. And they couldn't, maybe don't send a full team because of the problem with the travel, but send a strong team. 50% of the A team, 50%, to try and come away with something so that you can finish
1 point.
A strong bench, I suppose, Ashy?
Xola, I think, the Hurricanes might have won the final, but I think the biggest winners is the Lions, because, here's a team, and I'm fortunate also enough to, see the players and be part of it. And this team believed right from the very beginning that they can take it all the way. And I think as rugby players, we saw the humility, and we're a bunch of humble guys. So you're not going to go out there and say every week, oh, I'm going to win next weekend, perhaps. But that internal belief. The reason why this team lost today in the final was because they believed right from the very beginning of the season they can take it all the way. And today they were beaten, they were outplayed and beaten by a Hurricanes team that, let's remember, were beaten last year in the final. So I think, you know, in terms of the belief, the confidence, and whether or not they believe they can take it all the way, I think the team being in the final today, I think that's evident of the fact that they have believed, even though perhaps, you know, not everyone else believed, but that's a beautiful thing. And last week we saw at the end of the game, Elton Jantjies, he was in tears. You know, that's how much it means for this bunch of players, because imagine if you come and you're part of a team that's not really been given a chance. Butch has been there 2011. He's seen how this team has gone. And so to be able to today be there and be the runners-up in this final, I think they are the ultimate winners as far as rugby is concerned.
Yeah, well, what they certainly have provided the Lions is a blueprint to winning and exciting rugby for South African teams. And I want to ask you, gents, whether or not the other local teams can catch up. Do they change their game? Do they try and emulate what the Lions have done? Is that too late for that? Is that ship sailed already?
Well, I think that's the point we're trying to get at, is that, yes, the Lions had that opportunity now today to win a Super Rugby championship. They didn't. Now, the question is, will they get that opportunity again? We've already seen the other Super Rugby teams in South Africa take on this new approach of ball in hand, an approach that the Lions have probably had for the last 3 years. So they've certainly been trendsetters in South Africa from that point of view. Now the other teams, the Stormers, the Bulls, the Cheetahs have been playing it as well, the Sharks, you know, they're doing the same, and they probably have a pretty good player pool as well there, with schools feeding them, a good feeder system. So they'll be producing a lot of players in the next couple of years. Yeah. Combined with this, so those players combined with this new style of play, you know, they'll be challenging for top spots as well. So again, the question comes back, do you get another opportunity? Do you get an opportunity to win a Super Rugby title? So, you know, regret sometimes is a terrible thing. And I mean, I'm sitting here, you know, I didn't want one Currie Cup, one Super Rugby, anything like that.
I didn't want to raise the point.
No,
I mean,
you know, because you play in one and you think, now I'm 21, I'll get that opportunity again. And you don't.
Never.
You know, so you had this opportunity, you didn't make the most of it, and sometimes it leaves quite a mental scar. If you think you're so good to win it and then you get smashed 20 points to 3, you know, it takes a time to recover from something like that as well.
On top of it, guys, do we have the coaches?
Well, Xola,
in other unions?
You know, I think there's two things here. When we talk about the brand of play and the style of play, I think we have all commended the Lions for the way that they played. But today's final was evident of the fact that you can't just play one way. We saw how the Hurricanes, who's an expensive team, they can run the ball, they play a completely different game, being able to keep it in the tight phases. So it's that balance and being able to bring out the right game for the right conditions. Now, in terms of the way of the coaches, again, there's Johan Ackermann, sways the brain, and their coaching staff. You know, perhaps 3 years ago, would we have imagined that they would be losing today in the final? So I think we do have them, and you know, it's about giving the opportunity, being able to, you know, being shown the confidence and the resources that is required, and the time will come. And here we've seen how just staying in the game, being able to grow week in and week out, year after year, growing with the team, how they were able to do it. And the Hurricanes, John talks about opportunities, chances, and whether or not we'll get another one. Beauden Barrett today, man of the match. We've seen him last weekend. How long have the Hurricanes tried to win this? And finally they come out and, you know, being able to do this. So I think for Beauden Barrett, the man of the match, and, you know, it'll be interesting to hear what he had to say about the performance today.
Beauden, congratulations, Super Rugby champion finally, mate. The last 3 weeks for this team has just been brilliant.
Absolutely. You know, to be playing 3 games at home has just been awesome, and you know, to play in front of a full stadium tonight doesn't get any better. And, you know, the boys just worked really hard for each other, which has proved the difference for us for the season.
We're talking about proving a difference. I think in the finals, you have to make your goals, and you're perfect off the tee. I mean, what was going through your head?
I was just trying to stay relaxed and just stay in the process. Don't worry about the outcome and just relax and enjoy it.
Now, where did you come from your try? You're about 15 metres on the other side of the ball, but somehow, some way, you got there.
I don't know, mate. Just, I'm a tin ass, I think.
Now, just tell me, your little halfback, TJ Perenara, how much does he mean for you as a first half? I know what he's done over the last couple of weeks has been fantastic, giving you a lot of time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Combination's been going for 6 years now, so this is pretty special for us to share this moment. And the last, 4 or 5 weeks, he's really shown his form, so he's timed it perfectly.
Well, he reckons you should get half of that man of the match.
Oh, absolutely. He can have it. He can have it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, a man who certainly hasn't had it his own way in terms of trying to claim the number 10 jersey for the All Blacks, and I'm pretty sure that Steve Hansen and his team will be considering very strongly utilising Beauden Barrett as the starting fly half. Though they still seem to have a preference for Aaron Cruden at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you think he's done enough to convince them otherwise, John? If you were playing anywhere else in the world, he probably would have been a shoo-in.
He's a quality player. We've got 2 quality fly-offs sitting here with us. They can probably answer this better than me, but certainly from a from an outsider and having played against him a lot, he ticks all the boxes. He's a good tactical kicker. He's probably one of the fastest players, not fly-offs, players in world rugby. But in world rugby, his defence is much better. And what happens a lot, and you see it in the Hurricanes team, the opposition would identify him as a weak defender, but that in a way then opens up opportunities for Ardie Sevilla and the loose forwards to get turnovers. So, he's a quality player, and they're blessed with a lot of quality fly.
Yeah, but now you look at Hansen, All Black coach. He likes taking Barrett off the bench.
Yeah.
And he still believes, and I still think Cruden is going to get the first nod, because he believes the impact that Barrett can bring. After 60 minutes, it's unbelievable. And I still believe that's the way. Doesn't matter what happened today. That's the way the coach look at it, and you can't really find any fault with that in any case.
Yeah, he's never let them down off the bench, has he?
No. He's absolutely outstanding. He can actually come in at fullback as well. He covers fullback really well. And every time he's come on, he's created an opportunity. World Cup final against Australia. They're down by 7 points, I think it was. Turnover in there off. Ben Smith kicks the length of the field. Who's the guy who outruns everyone else? It's Beauden Barrett who's come onto the field. Do you remember him tracking back and tackling Villiers Leroux? Villiers was away down the right wing at Ellis Park, and from the other side of the field came Beauden Barrett and really gained 5 metres on him over 60, 70 metres. He's incredibly quick. So in the last 20 minutes of a game, this guy's very dangerous. And don't forget, Cruden doesn't make too many mistakes. His big problem is his goal kicking.
He's a solid.
I don't think his goal kicking is strong enough for international levels. So that might count against him. By the end of the season, the Chiefs were kicking with Mackenzie. Was taking the kicks, not Cruden. And when you go into test matches at the rugby championship level, you need your fly off because if they play Ben Smith at fullback or Dag, they've got to have a kicking fly-off, goal-kicking fly-off. So that gives a small advantage, I think, to Cruden or even Sapoanga.
Butchie, if you were still playing, would you choose the speed of Barrett or the boots that you had, which served you very well, specifically in 2007?
I thought you were going to say the speed.
Tackling and
I thought you were going to say the speed.
The speed? No.
I agree with both of them. I've got no doubt that the All Blacks will start him because he's just can't do anything wrong at the moment, and he's got so much confidence and such good form. So for me, I think he'll start, but I think his downfall is that he is so good off the bench, and like Nick says, he covers 10 and 15, and probably could easily play 12 as well. So for me, it's a tough one for him, because that last 20 minutes when there's tired legs out there, to bring him on to a field, he's definitely going to change the game.
The one thing, Ashwin, before we wrap up, that the Lions have shown is that players will remain if you play a good brand of rugby. Nick alluded to it, and the enjoyment of playing is something that's certainly permeated throughout the season for them. Fans will return to the stadium, which you saw last weekend, and we hope it lasts. This must certainly give other South African teams hope that you can retain players despite the lure of the pound and the yen, and that you can bring fans back to the stadium, which we didn't see this year, and we certainly hope to see a lot more of next year.
I fully agree with you, because I think, what the Lions have managed to achieve with the culture that's in the team, the manner within which the team playing, the number of players that are there, the spirit that is just there in and around this team. I think that is something that really, everyone, regardless of the other South African teams, but I think sport in general can take a lesson out of that. And, the environment that you create for players, we've all been there, Butchie. If you are a happy team, it comes out onto the field. But this is a team that have, the spirit of this team have been there through thick and thin. We saw them losing at certain stages, but they remained, the core group remained. We saw the bench came on today, and the impact that they made, and we talked about it in the build-up, how the Lions bench is, part and parcel of their success. And there's a whole group and squad of players, and I think it's just a healthy environment, Butchie.
Yeah, and I think also, everyone always talks on what a nice game plan the New Zealanders play and now the Lions. But I think the reason they play so well is the players have got the skills to do it. If they've got a prop in the back line, a lock, a flank, whatever it is, he's able to catch and pass. And for me, the easiest skill in the game is catching and passing. But for me, some of our teams just can't do that, and it's a worry. And we're going to need to up our skill level to be able to play this sort of game.
Is that because you spend, as a player, too much or not enough time on the basic skills and thinking more about game plan and things that are beyond what you should do as a standard, I suppose?
No, I don't think so. I think it's because the Flyers always got the ball and they kicked it away.
They don't want to share.
They never passed it to us. So, you couldn't actually improve that skill set.
But you need to pass it to somebody that can catch it.
Here we go.
But I think,
as we mentioned earlier, it's a process that takes time. So I think our guys probably do have the skills, but that's not our backup plan. Our backup plan is always to be physical and sort of run into guys. Whereas if we can have that as our backup plan, so when you're under pressure, you're not just focusing on what's in front of you and running into a guy. You're actually looking still to the space and trying to get the ball into space. If we can get to that stage, then I think we'll be fine.
But from structure, just from coaching is absolutely behind it all, because if you structure your week, you have to have time in every coaching session for at least 15 to 20 minutes of skills prior to going into structure, prior to going into organisation, team organisation, scrums, lineouts, attack phase, defence.
Overtrain, structure.
Over-structured teams. I think that is one of the main problems. We players in South Africa like to be told what to do, and they don't really like to be told to look up and make a decision yourself. They like saying, where do we go here? Where do we go from the next one? Where do we go from the next? And you have to teach a player to say, I can't tell you after the fifth phase where to go. But if you have your other players informing you, as we were talking about, good communication from the outside in, if we have players who can pass, we're going to make it a lot easier for ourselves.